goal of ATDev is to build the future iterations of devices that will allow people to stay independent and mobile no matter their level of physical ability. And so from the user side, going through the user interviews and the iterations with the Arionkoder designers really allowed us to come up with something that's much more intuitive, so that the first time the user turns the device on, they know exactly which buttons to push and which way to move their leg based on what the device is asking them to do. And then from the investor side, our previous iterations looked like engineering prototypes because that's what they were. And so working again with a professional design group, we've been able to really improve the design of the system and make it look market and product ready. We were able to actually really simplify the UI so that it was much more intuitive out of the box, and something that we can really can delight our end users instead of confusing them. So I think again, it's really helped us fine tune the product and improve our offerings as we're moving towards market. Not only is it just a great outcome in terms of the product, but also the Arionkoder group is just a great resource, and I'm glad to have you guys now as a group that I know and we can potentially go back to for future needs. Our ATDev stands for Assistive Technology Development, and I started the business with my co-founder Owen Kent right after I had finished my graduate program at UC Berkeley in exoskeleton design. My co-founder Owen is somebody who is a lifelong wheelchair user and assistive technology visionary. He's relied on assistive technology for his whole life in order to remain independent. And the goal of ATDev is to build the future iterations of devices that will allow people to stay independent and mobile no matter their level of physical ability. So our Reflex device is really our first device in that space, looking at physical rehabilitation and eventually movement. But we'd like to really support an ecosystem of devices that can enable people to stay independent. So the initial idea came from a personal need that Owen had. Owen, was somebody who's effectively paralyzed from the neck down, and therefore needs daily physical therapy in order to maintain joint range of motion and comfort throughout the day. And so unfortunately, that's something that insurance won't pay for because it's a chronic need. And so you have to train caregivers or family members how to do what's rather complicated physical therapy. And so Owen's idea was, can we use a robotic device to create this physical therapy and to enable daily use? And so he pitched the idea to me, and because I was in an exoskeleton lab at the time, we started looking at using robotic braces effectively to do that physical therapy. And so that's the initial research that we did at UC Berkeley. And then when we graduated, we'd gotten so much traction at Berkeley that we wanted to continue doing the work. So we spun up the company so we could start applying for federal grants to continue the research. The number one way that we try to cause an impact is by creating products that people actually want to use. And so that gets back to how much time we spend talking with our end users about the product. And so, ultimately we want our, physical rehabilitation devices to help patients and doctors go through the rehab process more efficiently, on their own terms, so that they can get back to living their lives in the way that they'd like to, and, independently. So that's the real impact that we'd like to make. Across the board, I would say, we're actively fundraising, as most startups are, so always raising capital. We're also, very close to market launch. And so we're spinning up manufacturing in Southern California, where I'm based and where our engineering team is based. And so we've got some great partners and internal team who's doing that work, but always additional support in the manufacturing supply chain space is useful. And then we've also got some great partner on the distribution side to help us start moving the product across the US when we launch later this year. But always looking to meet more doctors and potential distributors who are in our space, who can help us get our solution out to more patients to ultimately help them go through their rehab processes more efficiently. Next steps for us are this product launch. In the US, I'm very excited to get our device out in an official capacity to patients later this year. And then outside of that, our broader vision again is to facilitate the creation of this ecosystem of devices that can help patients, no matter their level of physical function, to stay independent. And so we're very excited to bring our Reflex device to market. I think there's a ton of commonality, right? It's early stage companies, you've got to find money, you've got to find customers, you've got to get your product moving, and you've got to do all those things at the same time with not a lot of people. So, I think you're wearing tons of different hats, no matter what type of startup it is. But as a healthcare company, there are a couple of additional factors that I think are pretty unique. One, our device is regulated by the FDA, so we have to learn the whole regulatory process and understand what data and safety testing the FDA needs to see before launching. We also, ultimately our end user is different than our customer, right? Because the end user is the patient who's using the device to improve their health, but the customer is the insurance company who's paying for the device. So, and then there's also the doctor, right? You've got the three players in any healthcare system. You've got the patient, the provider, and the payer. And so we have to keep all three happy. We have to make sure that clinically that the patient is going to get benefit from the device. We have to make sure that it fits into the doctor's workflow. We're not creating additional work for them. It's really a benefit to what they're doing. And we have to make sure that we can create the technology and ultimately the clinical service at a price point that insurance is either already paying for or is so great that they're willing to pay for a new thing or more than what they're currently paying for. So keeping multiple that whole environment or ecosystem happy, I think is pretty unique to the healthcare space and an additional challenge. From a technology perspective, there's so much exciting new technology coming out, particularly around AI, but also, AI, there's sort of what's in the news right now with things like ChatGPT, but also huge benefits that AI is having in the robotics space in terms of our ability to have robots really understand human intention and, having our system then be able to be improved to be more fluid and more comfortable with the patient, huge benefits there. But also, a huge issue in the assistive technology space is insurance reimbursement, right? As new technologies come out, can be a long-winded process to get insurance companies on board to then get things paid for. And so, making sure that you're collecting efficacy data and also just, really staying in touch with your customers and the patients who are going to be using the product, and so that they can help you tell a story to insurance companies to make sure that we can keep moving the assistive technology space forward. At a high level, our system, our team is a small team, and we had built a user interface that was great for testing and for being used by engineers in very early feasibility studies, but wasn't the most intuitive thing in the world. And so from the user side, going through the user interviews and the iterations with the Arionkoder designers really allowed us to come up with something that's much more intuitive, so that the first time the user turns the device on, they know exactly which buttons to push and which way to move their leg based on what the device is asking them to do. So we've seen a huge uptick in our users understanding what the device would like them to do and them acting and responding in the way that we'd like them to. And then from the investor side, our previous iterations looked like engineering prototypes because that's what they were. And so working again with a professional design group, we've been able to really improve the design of the system and make it look market and product ready. And so that's helped us move forward with investors as well. We try to talk to as many people as we can about the system: doctors, patients, physical therapists, and other engineers, and now designers. And so always getting a new input on the way the system works. A fresh set of eyes is beneficial because we have assumptions and understandings of how the system works, but we're so in the weeds. It's great to have somebody who hasn't seen it before take a look to hear their feedback on where it was at the start, and then their brainstorming and ideas of where we could take the system. And so I think again, working with specifically with user interface designers, we were able to actually really simplify the UI, so that it was much more intuitive out of the box, and something that we can really can delight our end users, instead of confusing them. So I think again, it's really helped us fine tune the product and improve our offerings as we're moving towards market. So I mean, it was great because it was pretty blue sky brainstorming. I broke down how we currently use the UI and current physical functions. And then the Arionkoder team did a great job of looking at other existing solutions and trying to take an understanding of what works and what doesn't work from those solutions. I also provided some early, some feedback that we already had from patients with our current designs. And then it was very collaborative, right? So we pulled up Miro boards and other online tools so that we could brainstorm and design together. And then it was we'd spend 2 hours brainstorming, and then the Arionkoder team would take a day or two to go back and expand on their ideas, and come back and meet with us again, and then we'd give feedback and then do another loop. So there were honestly a ton of meetings, but I think that's key, because you're not going to get it right on the first time or the second time or the third time. It's a lot of iteration. So I think maybe from thing that in hindsight that was surprising is just how effective that iteration was at arriving at a useful solution. Really just a great group of people, but then also very detail oriented. So there's lots of back and forth with the designers helping our team to fully understand what we wanted to build. We had our initial goals, but to expand on them and to become very detailed and our goal. And then also we had done a bunch of patient and doctor interviews, but going through the process with the Arionkoder team and specifically around the UI was very informative. Generating the script for the user testing, and then coming up with creative ways to make quick prototypes and then get feedback from patients, and then watching live the designers iterate on those designs was impressive and also really effective. So overall, I'd say the process was great. I'd love to thank the Arionkoder team, Juan and Calde and Toma and everybody else. It was a great process, and we're very happy with the outcome. So thank you all.